If you can't beat him, here's what you don't do. You don't join him, you steal him. We're potentially in the middle of another big tech breakup. No, no, this time not OpenAI and SpaceX. Rather interestingly enough, it is OpenAI and one of their more recent business partners in Apple. You know, the big Apple. Give us more on that, Danzzy.
Yeah, thank you, Manny. And the article we have today is Apple has sued OpenAI on Friday, 10 July 2026, alleging that the AI company has stolen the iPhone maker's trade secrets to develop its own yet to be revealed AI gadgets. In the suit filed in the District Court of Northern California, Apple accuses OpenAI of trade secret misappropriation and breach of contract. OpenAI last year announced it has been working with Apple's former design chief on a hash project to build devices meant to bring smartphone users into the age of AI. The device is expected to be unveiled later this year. Yeah, so Manny, that's the article that we have today. And let's kick it started. What do you have to say concerning this lawsuits between Apple and OpenAI?
Yeah, just right off the rip, I think I'm gonna take a side already. I will go with Apple here, and I'll tell you why in a sec. So, just I did a little bit of reading on it, and from a lot of the stuff that I found, it's been a pre-established pattern leading up to this, where OpenAI consciously went after people that worked at Apple and then kind of source that pipeline into, you work at Apple, we're going to get you to OpenAI, and you're not just coming by yourself, you're coming with all that internal knowledge you had on working products, on products that we already have out there, and most importantly, on products that are not released yet. So it's been leading up to that, and I think this has always been coming, and just reading up more on that, the news confirmed that Apple did reach out to OpenAI, like under the cover, saying, "Hey, that's confidential stuff you're getting from my employees. You really shouldn't be doing that. We can settle this down on the low." And OpenAI didn't really heed to that, which is why Apple had to bring it to the court here. So just going off the rip, it's been leading up to this. Apple tried to not drag it this far out, but then this was the only option they had at this point. Again, looking at the data, records state that OpenAI currently has over 400 employees who recently worked at Apple. And if that's not suspicious enough for you, I don't know what else could be, but let's hear what's your take on that?
The position you are holding, yeah, it does make sense. But I beg to differ or digress in the sense that some years back, we have seen multiple instances where startup companies themselves accuse Apple of hiring their employees, some senior executives and even engineers. And Apple always tried to say that that wasn't the case. So it somehow looks like this is some form of karma coming to Apple at this moment. I can give you some scenarios of where Apple decided to deny the fact that they are hiring other companies and trying to take trade secrets. An example of one of the companies Apple did this to would be Masimo's, hope I'm getting the pronunciation right, where the company deals with medical device stuff. And so Apple decided to hire a lot of its employees, bring them into Apple's ecosystem for them to help in designing of the oxygen blood sensor that you have on the Apple Watch. The other instances. And Money, if this doesn't look like karma, I'm wondering what karma really means.
So first things first, I totally believe karma's a real thing, and we all have karma be negative or positive. But again, I think we want to separate emotion from the real things happening here, right? So Apple hasn't really had the best of history in terms of all the stuff you just mentioned, going after little companies, getting their employees, getting their IP and merging it into a bigger conglomerate, which is Apple. But let's isolate that from what's really happening. The first one leading to it, one of the major parts actually is a former Apple employee who, I think Frank Chen it is, he was a senior software engineer at Apple for 8 years. And then he decided to leave Apple, which is totally fair. People move jobs, bigger pay, bigger whatever that works for you. So that happened. And then comes to find out he didn't turn in his Apple work laptop. So it means he moved it from Apple and still had it, even though he wasn't an employee at Apple. And further information suggests he actually got into Apple's network through a current Apple employee. and got insider information, which you really shouldn't be doing. That's never allowed. And then after he got in there, he started doing work based off of that. And then he was a big part of OpenAI's recruitment as well, because they consciously, like I said before, tried to get people that work at Apple. So apparently during the interviews, he would ask people, hey, like, what are you working on at Apple? Like, show and tell, bring some of the stuff you're working on, maybe you might have a better chance of getting into OpenAI. So he used that insider knowledge he had from working at Apple and also knowing what direction they might be going to kind of obtain more current information from people that still work at Apple. So I think that's morally wrong, legally worse. So just coming from a karma standpoint, are you going to say maybe OpenAI is going to get their karma handed at some point? Maybe another company comes around and does what OpenAI just did to Apple back to OpenAI. If we're going to stick within karma, then who's to say they're not going to get their own karma at some point? But again, we want to separate that from what's actually happening right now. Just leading up to a bigger picture, if OpenAI could actually do this, what should we as individuals expect from them? Because if they're going after big companies like Apple, what about you, the average consumer who uses ChatGPT a lot? Maybe you have a product that you're working on, it hasn't been released yet, but you're using Codex to develop it. Who's to say your IP code isn't really getting looked at? And next thing you know, whatever you're working on in silent might be in OpenAI's next rollout. Who's to say?
Yeah, you do make some great points here where, yeah, it's been morally wrong. That's correct. I do agree with that. But Apple has always boasted of having great security. And so if they are having certain issue at this point in time, I'm wondering how their exit policy for employees that leave the company has been done. Probably they need to take a relook at how staff exit the company. Because if a staff has left the company and he still has access to devices, his account is still active and he's able to sign in and do all this stuff, we may need to question Apple's security a little more, though they claim that they have the best security we can speak about. Now, let's speak about what OpenAI is doing. And that's true where we have gotten to a point where you would usually have people inputting some form of ideas that they have into these chatbots, and then the chat assists them with what they want to do. And yeah, this is where you need to balance between the kind of data that you give out or expose and the kind of data that you keep.
There's that big looming question about, is my data really safe when I put it in some sort of chatbot? Like, where is it actually going? I know you could turn off your training, where you talked about this in previous recordings, where you could turn off your training from them using your data for training. But who's to say, even though you might turn it off, who's to say your data wouldn't still get used for some other business reason? So that's always a looming question. And I think the more we advance with AI, the more we all kind of integrate that into our workflows, who's to say we're not directly exposing whatever we're working on? And if it's a good idea, who's to say it might not just be stolen? And then you see it in their next rollouts.
Yeah, so money, those are great points that we both make with regards to for and against both companies. And to you out there watching this podcast right now, let us know in the comment section what's your take on this lawsuit that is currently coming up.
Funny enough, while we've talked about all this stuff, I think Danzzy probably forgot to mention how we actually talked about OpenAI's ventures into the hardware market sometime back in March, April, I believe it was. And then we had the whole session, but for some reason, someone forgot to hit record. So I'm hoping and praying today he actually hits record so y'all could get to see this. But again, thanks for being here with us. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Please do that. Hit the like button, share with your friends, family dog, anyone who knows you and you know them and care to listen. Please share and subscribe so we can actually get to hear about you. And again, put in your comments down below and we will get to see y'all again soon. Peace out.